Hello, my friends. Today I'm going to explore with you something that may take a little while for you to digest. So please pay attention, listen carefully, and if necessary, go back to what I have to share with you today, if you want to. So today I'm going to talk about the ultimate goal of life, which is called moksha, or freedom. And this is the eternal quest in every spiritual tradition, to have total freedom to be in that space where we can manifest anything that we want, that we can create anything that we want. It's freedom to create, freedom to manifest, freedom to love, freedom to fulfill every longing that we have as humans. So one thing I should say, even before I start, is that we all want freedom, but we also fear it. Remember in childhood when there was a time when you played hide and seek, and it was very interesting. When you were hiding, you wanted to be found out, but you also did not want to be found out. So biting your nails, what's going to happen? Am I going to be found out, or should I remain hidden? This is our wanting freedom, but also fearing it. Now, freedom can only happen if we relinquish what we call the known and surrender to what we call the unknown. The known is the prison of our past conditioning. The known is the prison of our conditioned mind that has been recycling ever since the beginning of the cognitive revolution, when humans learned to tell stories based on perceptual snapshots of experience, of human experience. Those perceptual snapshots of human experience are modified activities of awareness, wanting to experience itself as that. But then we also create stories out of those perceptual snapshots. And those stories then limit our experiences to within the framework of those stories, within the framework of the stories. And so we think of ourselves as squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime, with this perceptual activity that we call both the body and the world that goes along with it. And of course, the world that goes along with the changing perceptual body is also a changing world, the dreamscape that goes along with the fictional character that we call a person. On the other hand, the unknown is the formless, the borderless, the infinite, the spaceless, the timeless, the unimaginable, the inconceivable, the irreducible, the spaceless, fundamental ground of all existence. And this has often been referred to as the dark sea of awareness, because it is invisible and it cannot be seen, although it is modifying itself into all forms of seeing. And the light of perception is a modified activity of the dark sea of awareness. And this light of perception creates the manifest universe, which is a perceptual universe. The world we experience is a magical, illusory world of human perceptions. As we've said before, other species have their own worlds of perception. There are only worlds of perception. only worlds of perception. And of course, these different worlds of perception may have leaky margins and may be entangled with each other. But what creates these worlds of perception? What creates these worlds of perception is our internal dialogue, our conditioned collective mind, which is projecting as our changing physical body that correlates and goes along with the changing dreamscape, the perceptual dreamscape that we call the changing experience of the world. In order to plunge into this infinite sea of awareness, we must transcend our internal dialogue, because it's our internal dialogue that actually creates our false identity that we call a person. A false identity that we call a person. In order to actually explore the dark sea of awareness, we need to understand some more fundamental principles. And I'm looking at my notes that I made for you this morning to go over those fundamental principles. So in order to plunge into that sea of infinite awareness that projects itself as worlds of perception, one of the things that is necessary is forgetting our identity as a person. And this identity of a person and attachment to it is what creates both fear and separation. What we call a person is a concept, a process, a made-up story, which is provisional, ever-changing, ungraspable, just like all of perceived existence. So the world we inhabit is a world of perception, which is, of course, as we've talked before, a learned phenomenon. The world we perceive is a relic of the past. It is projected, just like our body, by our internal dialogue. And so this internal dialogue, if you close your eyes, you will experience it as a story you're telling yourself about yourself. Of course, we talk about these stories being about other people, about situations, about circumstances, about events, about nature, but all as they pertain to that entity that we call a person. But the person is a concept. It's totally in every moment, creating snapshots of perception. The continuity of the physical world and the continuity of the evolving, growing body from fertilized egg to dusty death is snapshots of perception given a storyline. So when we go beyond the internal dialogue, only then can we enter the infinite sea of perception, of perceptual possibilities, the infinite sea of awareness, in which are dormant or lying dormant perceptual possibilities that manifest as perceptual bodies, biological organisms, and perceptual worlds, all through a force that we call intent or intention in that dark sea, infinite sea of unbounded, eternally present, infinite possibilities of perception projecting as perceptual worlds or lokas, infinite lokas, infinite experiences in the theaters of space-time, causality, and infinite dimensions as well. If we can go to that level, So how do we go to that level? Well, of course, meditation is one way of quietening the internal dialogue, or taking each perception and tracing it back to its origin, whatever that perceptual activity might be: seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, but also cognitive activities like thinking, feeling, imagining, reflecting, and inquiring. When we practice all these and we trace back each experience to its source, we enter the formless sea of awareness, the invisible domain of existence that manifests as all domains of existence, lokas in space-time, locations in space-time. So here's another thing to grasp. It is not perception that gives rise to awareness, but it is awareness that gives rise to perception. And because awareness is infinite, there are infinite modes of perception. They're species specific. Each of us inhabits or creates or conceives or projects our own universe. Each of us is a universe unto itself as a human, because each of us has a different internal dialogue, a different story based on our past experiences. And then you have all these other species, we call them animals, other sentient beings that have their own perceptual worlds. Of course, there are leaky margins because all perceptual worlds in this loka that we call planet Earth, Karma Bhumi, are entangled with each other. But you go to the source and then there are other bhumis, other lokas. There have to be, because awareness, being infinite, is capable of modifying itself into infinite conceptual and perceptual bodies and worlds. The Yoga Vashishta says that the body does not create the mind creates the body. And the mind, there are innumerable minds based on the modifications of awareness that are creating perceptual cognitive activity and interpreting them as stories. So if there are infinite stories, then there are infinite worlds to be created in that sea of awareness. Now, as you know, at the moment, 99.999% of the visible world or visible universe with its 2 trillion galaxies, according to current science, 700 sextillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets. And that is our human construct for what we call the universe. All these stars, all these galaxies. 0.01%. 97% is dark energy and dark matter. And 3% is atomic, of which most of it is invisible interstellar dust. So the visible universe is less than 1% of what exists. What is the rest? Dark matter. Dark matter is called matter because it's bends space-time in the same way as regular matter. And I'm proposing to you today that dark matter is actually the sea of awareness modifying itself into atomic matter, but has not yet become an atomic matter. It has only acquired the ability to bend space-time as a modified expression of itself, and hence is responsible for most of the gravity in the universe, almost all of the gravity of the universe. Without it, planets would spiral off to interstellar space and disappear. And so would you and me. Dark energy is the opposite of that, expanding this space between galaxies. But since it's all non-atomic and atoms themselves are modified perceptual activities at a microscopic level, ultra microscopic level of consciousness, then since atoms are human constructs that at some point become perceptual activities or available only through ultra microscopes, ultra stroboscopic microscopes that can detect the movement of elements and particles, then we can see that possibly dark matter, dark energy are movements of consciousness, invisible awareness that ultimately manifest as this visible universe. But if you understand this principle, then because infinity is infinity, infinity can have infinite manifestations without compromising its infinite status. Okay, so on a practical level, are a few things we can do. One, we can transcend each of our perceptual activities, our internal dialogue through meditation, going beyond the internal dialogue. The second thing we can do is totally relinquish the idea that we are a person. Personhood is a construct that allows us to experience this and this. But there's no such thing as a person. A person is an ongoing perceptual activity of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts given a storyline. So get rid of the idea that you're a person. Shift your identity from being a person to that in which the person is an ongoing perceptual cognitive activity, just like the rest of the world. And one way to get rid of this idea of personhood, a convenient fictional character that participates in a convenient, sometimes very enjoyable, and sometimes a nightmarish dreamscape. It's a convenient construct, but if you remember that it's a construct and you go back to the awareness in which the person, and there are so many people right now, over 7 billion people, all with their unique universes, entangled, of course, in our collective dreamscape, but each one of us inhabits, conceives, governs, constructs, and becomes the person, the universe that we're experiencing. 7 billion human universes, not to mention all the universes of sentient beings just in this one loka. How do you get rid of the idea of a person or the construct of a person or even the experience of a person? Get rid of your self-importance. Get rid of that which we call self-importance, which is the same thing as self-pity, self-sorrow. If we don't have self-pity, we don't need self-importance. So question every story, question every construct, and remember that the known is a snapshot in an eternal, timeless spinning out of perceptual activities, cognitive activities that manifest as almost a ceaseless dance of manifestation. Infinite without compromising the infinite. So with total abandon, give up the need for approval, the need for validation, the need that we all have, even to be relevant, because these are based on personhood. Enter divinehood. Give up personhood and enter divinehood. When you look at anything, it is the divine that is looking, manifesting, conceiving, governing, and becoming that which you look. In every snapshot of perception, you create the world, you create the body, you create the mind. And then whatever storyline you give it becomes your world. But behind that, dormant, in that dark, dark sea of awareness, is the potential for infinite manifestations. So jump into this abyss of freedom. And when you jump into this abyss of freedom, there is joy, there's ecstasy, there is freedom from the construct of death, and there is also, through intention, in that stillness of being and tied to imagination, the ability to manifest perceptual images in 3D, 4D, 5D, the coming metaverse, all through intention, attention, and knowing the abyss of this formless sea of awareness as the abyss of total freedom, and the singularity that manifests as infinite forms and phenomena, some currently even beyond our imagination. Going back to Rumi, when I die, I will soar with angels, and when I die to the angels, what I shall become, you cannot imagine. Okay. Let me know if you agree, disagree, what your objections are, and let's continue to explore reality, which is both truth and untruth, which is both manifest and unmanifest, which is both illusion and the womb of illusion, the womb of creation.